The front door felt heavier than it used to. 2 weeks in the hospital had weakened more than just his heart. Daniel's hands trembled as he turned the key, the familiar click echoing through the quiet house like a warning. "Hey, I'm home," he called softly, hoping for warmth, for welcome. But his son, Ryan, didn't even look up from his laptop. The old armchair that once belonged to Daniel now cradled Ryan as if it had always been his. "Yeah, I see you," Ryan said flatly, eyes fixed on the screen. It wasn't the homecoming Daniel had dreamed of during those long nights surrounded by the hum of hospital machines. His wife, Clara, appeared from the kitchen, drying her hands on a dish towel, her smile polite and practiced. "You look better, Daniel," she said, though her tone sounded like she was reading from a script. Daniel set down his suitcase and the hospital discharge papers on the coffee table, glancing around the living room that had once reflected his life. The family pictures that used to line the mantel were gone. The bookshelf, once full of his old novels and travel guides, now displayed new glossy covers, arranged neatly by color. Even the lamp his late wife, Margaret, had found at a flea market was missing. "Where are my things?" he asked quietly. "We were just cleaning," Clara replied, using that calm voice she reserved for uncomfortable questions. It was getting a little cluttered. Daniel's chest tightened. Clutter? Those were memories. Ryan finally looked up, tapping his fingers on the laptop. "Dad, we need to talk about the future of this house." "The future?" Daniel stared at his son. The words hit him like a slap. As if the surgery had already buried him. As if he wasn't standing right there. "What about the future?" he asked, his voice shaking slightly. "It's time to make some changes," Ryan said simply. Daniel walked into the garage, his heart pounding, the surgical scar across his chest tugging with each breath. The boxes were stacked neatly, his tools, old photo albums, Margaret's recipe cards, all labeled in Clara's neat handwriting. Daniel's things. Storage. It looked more like a move than a cleanup. "Why is everything in boxes?" he demanded, his voice echoing through the cold space. Ryan appeared in the doorway, arms crossed. "We thought you might be more comfortable with a new setup," he said smoothly. "A new setup?" Daniel repeated, bitterness rising. "This is my house, Ryan." Ryan leaned against the doorframe, his tone calm but cold. "Actually, Dad, we've been thinking. You're not getting any younger. The stairs are dangerous. It's time to think about your condition." Daniel's eyes narrowed. "My condition? You didn't even visit me in the hospital." Ryan shrugged. "The doctor doesn't live here. We do. Me and Clara." His words hung in the air like poison. Daniel felt the weight of them settle deep in his chest. The home he had built with his own hands suddenly felt like it no longer belonged to him. Daniel stood in the middle of the garage, surrounded by boxes that spelled out his erasure. Each one was labeled neatly as if his life could be filed away like an old invoice. "You think I'm some old man waiting to die," he said quietly. Ryan sighed, rubbing his temple. "Don't be dramatic, Dad. We're trying to make life easier for everyone." "Everyone but me," Daniel replied sharply. He could see Clara watching from the kitchen doorway, pretending to tidy a shelf, her eyes avoiding his. "It's not like that," she murmured. "It's exactly like that," Daniel said, the tremor in his voice breaking the silence that followed. He turned and walked slowly toward the stairs, gripping the railing for support. Each step sent a dull ache through his chest, but he didn't stop. Behind him, the muffled sound of Ryan and Clara whispering filled the air like smoke. "You think he suspects?" Clara asked. "Let him," Ryan muttered. "Soon it won't matter." Daniel froze halfway up the stairs, his heart sinking. Their voices carried just enough for him to understand. Whatever they were planning, it wasn't about helping him live better. It was about helping him disappear quietly. He continued climbing, his pulse thudding like a drum in his ears. The bedroom door creaked as he opened it. At least here, some pieces of the past had survived. His old dresser, the wooden bed he'd built with Margaret, the curtains she'd sewn by hand, all still there. He sat down slowly, breathing through the tightness in his chest. "Tomorrow will be better," he whispered to himself. Maybe this was just the awkwardness of change. Maybe he was overthinking things. Downstairs, laughter broke the stillness. Clara's soft giggle, Ryan's deep voice, so casual, so comfortable. The sound made Daniel's stomach twist. He realized, then, that he was a guest in his own home. That night, Daniel lay awake listening to the sounds of the house. The ticking clock, the hum of the refrigerator, the creak of the floorboards, all familiar, yet colder now. At some point, he heard Ryan's footsteps approach the stairs, pause outside his room, then move past without a word. No good night, no how are you feeling. Just silence. Daniel stared at the ceiling, one hand resting over his chest. The doctor's words echoed in his mind: avoid stress. Stay calm. Any sudden pressure could be fatal. But how could he stay calm when the people under his roof made him feel like a stranger? Morning came too bright, too harsh. Daniel's chest felt heavy, as if someone was pressing down on it. When he tried to sit up, the room spun. Ryan, he croaked, his throat dry. No answer. He tried again, louder. Ryan. Clara. Downstairs, he could hear the clatter of dishes and the hum of the morning news. He struggled to stand, each movement sending sharp pain down his arm. Please, he gasped, reaching for the phone on the dresser, but it was gone. His heartbeat pounded in his ears. Ryan! He shouted again, desperate now. Call an ambulance. The house stayed silent, except for the sound of someone making coffee. Daniel's breathing grew shallow. His vision dimmed at the edges as cold sweat broke across his forehead. Ryan! He cried again, his voice cracking. After a long pause, he finally heard footsteps on the stairs, slow, steady, not rushed. Ryan appeared in the doorway, his face calm, his eyes calculating. What is it now, Dad? Daniel clutched his chest, gasping. I can't breathe. Call an ambulance. Ryan's lips pressed into a line. You're fine. You just need rest. Please, son, Daniel begged, his voice barely a whisper. Don't let me die. But Ryan only sighed, like a man annoyed by an inconvenience. You always exaggerate, Ryan muttered, glancing at his father's trembling hands. It's just anxiety. You'll be fine in a minute. He turned to leave. No. Daniel's voice came out sharp, desperate. Please call someone. Ryan paused at the doorway, his hand resting on the knob. Then, with quiet finality, he said, maybe this is for the best. Daniel froze. What did you say? Ryan walked back, picked up Daniel's phone from the nightstand, and slipped it into his pocket. Rest now, Dad. You've lived long enough. The door closed with a soft click. Daniel stared at it in disbelief, realizing the lock had turned from the outside. He tried to stand, but his legs gave out. Pain radiated from his chest down his left arm, burning and sharp. He pressed his hand against the wall, sliding down to the floor. He locked me in, he whispered. The room spun violently, and he clutched the edge of the bed for balance. Downstairs, the sound of a coffee machine hissed and gurgled, followed by Clara's laughter. You did the right thing, she said faintly. We'll be okay soon. Daniel's heart sank. Even she was part of it. He closed his eyes, fighting against the dizziness. He refused to die this way, alone and betrayed. Crawling toward the window took every ounce of strength he had left. The latch was stiff, painted over years ago, but he forced it open. Cool air brushed against his sweaty face, reviving him slightly. Across the street, his neighbor Peter was watering his garden, his old straw hat tilted against the sun. Peter. Daniel croaked, his voice hoarse. Help me. Peter looked up, startled, squinting at the sight of his pale, trembling neighbor leaning out the window. Daniel? What's wrong? Call an ambulance. Please. I'm locked in. Daniel shouted. Peter dropped the hose instantly and ran toward his front door without another word. Daniel sagged against the window frame, relief flooding through him. Peter would call for help. Someone would come. He just had to hold on. But his relief was short-lived. From below, he heard the unmistakable slam of the front door and the pounding of angry footsteps on the stairs. Ryan had heard him yelling. No, no, Daniel whispered. Please God, no. The door burst open, slamming against the wall. Ryan's face was red with fury. What did you do? He shouted, striding across the room. He grabbed Daniel by the collar and yanked him upright. You called someone? Daniel struggled to breathe. I called for help. Ryan's grip tightened, his fingers pressing dangerously close to Daniel's surgical wound. "You think you can ruin everything," he hissed. "Do you know what happens if they find out?" "They'll find the truth," Daniel rasped, trying to pull away. "That you tried to kill me." Ryan's eyes flared with something dark. "I didn't try to kill you," he said through gritted teeth. "I just stopped saving you." The words hit Daniel harder than the pain. It wasn't madness, it was cold logic. "You're my son," he whispered, tears filling his eyes. "Not anymore," Ryan said quietly. "You stopped being my father the day you became my problem." Outside, the faint wail of sirens began to grow louder, a distant promise of salvation. Ryan froze, panic flashing across his face. "Who did you call?" "Peter," Daniel whispered weakly. "He saw me." Ryan swore under his breath, pacing to the window. "You stupid old man," he muttered. "You've ruined everything." He looked down at the driveway where Peter now stood, waving toward the approaching ambulance. Ryan turned back, his eyes filled with calculation. "Listen carefully," he said, his voice trembling now. "When they come, you'll tell them you got confused. You thought the door was locked, but it wasn't. Do you understand me?" Daniel's breathing came in ragged bursts. "And if I don't?" Ryan's face hardened. "Then I'll make your life miserable. I control your medication, your food, everything. Think about that before you open your mouth." He straightened his shirt, forcing his expression into calm professionalism as footsteps sounded outside. "Remember, Dad," he said coldly. "Old men get confused all the time." He left the room, the door swinging shut behind him. Daniel could hear him downstairs, greeting the paramedics in a cheerful tone. "Must be some misunderstanding," he said. But then Daniel heard the paramedic's voice, sharp, authoritative. "Sir, we need to see him immediately." The lock turned, and two paramedics entered. A woman with gray streaks in her hair and a young man carrying medical equipment. "Mr. Harris," she said gently. "Are you in pain?" Daniel nodded weakly. "Chest pain," he managed. She shot a look over her shoulder. "Sir, why was the door locked?" Ryan's voice came smooth and steady. "It wasn't. He's confused. Post-surgery disorientation." "We'll let the patient speak for himself," the woman said firmly. Her partner knelt beside Daniel, checking his pulse, his eyes narrowing at the sweat and pallor. "We need to get him out now," he said. "Possible heart failure." Daniel closed his eyes in relief. As they lifted him onto the stretcher, Daniel caught a glimpse of Ryan standing frozen by the doorway, his mask slipping. For the first time, Daniel saw fear in his son's eyes. Not concern, fear of being exposed. "Don't worry, Dad," Ryan said quickly, his voice trembling slightly. "I'll meet you at the hospital." Daniel didn't answer. The paramedics carried him down the stairs, past the kitchen where Clara stood pale and silent. Outside, Peter waited by the ambulance, his face filled with concern. "You're safe now, Dan," he said softly. Daniel met his gaze and whispered, "Not yet. But I will be." The ride to the hospital felt endless. The siren's wail faded in and out, mixing with the rhythmic beep of the monitor beside him. Daniel's hand clutched the blanket, his mind racing faster than his heartbeat. He tried to kill me. The realization was now undeniable. Every word, every dismissive look, every missing photo had been a sign, and he had refused to see it. The paramedic beside him, her name tag read Sarah, kept her tone calm and steady. "You're going to be okay, Mr. Harris. Just hang on." Daniel managed a weak nod. "Please," he whispered. "Don't let my son near me." Sarah's eyes flicked toward her partner, who gave a small, silent nod. She understood more than Daniel could say. At the hospital, the flurry of motion surrounded him. Bright lights, urgent voices, cold air that smelled like antiseptic and safety. They hooked him to machines, slipped an oxygen mask over his face, and pushed medication through in 4-line. For the first time in hours, the pain began to dull. He heard a doctor's voice above him, clear and controlled. "He's stable now. Another hour and we might have lost him." The words filled Daniel with both gratitude and fury. Another hour, and Ryan would have won. 2 days later, Daniel lay in a recovery room, the steady rhythm of the monitor his only companion. The nurses came and went with gentle smiles and professional efficiency. But no visitors came. No son, no daughter-in-law, just silence. On the morning of the third day, a woman in a white coat entered his room. She was tall, with kind but searching eyes. "I'm Dr. Morgan," she said, checking his chart. "You're a lucky man, Mr. Harris. If help had come any later, we wouldn't be having this conversation." Daniel smiled faintly. "Luck had nothing to do with it, Doctor. My neighbor saved me." Dr. Morgan nodded, but her expression grew thoughtful. "The paramedics mentioned something unusual. You were locked in your room during a cardiac emergency." Daniel's gaze drifted toward the window. "It was a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding," she repeated gently. "Mr. Harris, if someone deliberately prevented you from getting medical help, that's a crime." Daniel closed his eyes for a long moment. "I know. But he's my son." Dr. Morgan's tone softened. "And you're his father, not his prisoner. You don't have to protect him." "I'm not protecting him," Daniel murmured. "I'm preparing something." Her brows furrowed. "Preparing what?" Daniel opened his eyes, his voice steady now. "Justice." That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. The machines hummed quietly, their green lights pulsing like small heartbeats in the dark. He thought about Margaret, the warmth of her laughter, the way she used to say, "You can forgive your children, Daniel, but never let them destroy you." He turned the words over in his mind like a prayer. Ryan had wanted him gone, erased, forgotten. But Daniel had survived, and survival meant he had a chance to fight back. When the morning nurse brought him breakfast, Daniel asked for his discharge papers. "Are you sure you're ready to leave?" she asked gently. "More than ready," he said. At 2 in the afternoon, Daniel stepped outside the hospital into the clear June air. The sun felt warmer than he remembered, brighter somehow. A taxi pulled up, and he gave the driver his address. During the ride, he planned every step. There would be no anger, no shouting. This would be quiet, methodical, and final. When the car stopped in front of his house, he sat there for a moment, looking at the place that had once been his pride and joy. It didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a battlefield waiting for the last move. "You okay, sir?" the driver asked. "I will be," Daniel replied. Inside, the air smelled faintly of cleaning spray and deceit. The photos had been returned to the shelves, probably to cover the guilt. The furniture was neatly arranged, everything perfect, as though nothing had ever happened. But Daniel could feel the lie beneath it all. He went upstairs to his bedroom, opened the dresser drawer, and pulled out the small digital recorder he used years ago to preserve Margaret's stories. It still worked perfectly. He turned it on, spoke a few test words, and replayed them. The audio was clear. "Good," he whispered. "You wanted me gone, Ryan. Now you'll tell the world why." He gathered documents next, his hospital discharge papers, medical reports, and the paramedic's note about the locked door. Then, at exactly 3:30, he picked up the phone and called the local police department. "This is Daniel Harris," he said calmly. "I need to report a case of elder abuse. Attempted murder, actually." The operator's tone sharpened instantly. "Are you safe right now, sir?" "For the moment. But I'd like officers here tonight, around 7:30. You'll want to hear something for yourself." "What should we expect to find, sir?" Daniel smiled faintly. "A confession." He hung up before she could ask more. The trap was set. By 6 o'clock, he heard the sound of Ryan's car pulling into the driveway. Daniel positioned himself in the living room, the recorder tucked neatly into his shirt pocket, its red light hidden beneath the fabric. He rehearsed every word in his head. No anger, no fear, just truth. The front door opened. "Dad." Ryan called out. "You're home." "Where else would I be?" Daniel answered, his tone calm. Ryan appeared in the doorway, still wearing his work clothes, pretending to look surprised. "You should have stayed longer at the hospital. You're not ready." "I'm stronger than you think," Daniel said, meeting his son's eyes steadily. "Much stronger." Ryan hesitated, sensing something different in his father's voice. "Why are you sitting there like that?" Daniel leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. "Because it's time we had an honest talk." "About what?" "About the night you locked me in my room while I was dying." Ryan flinched. That's not what happened, he said quickly. You were confused. Confused. Daniel's voice rose slightly. You stole my phone, ignored my calls for help, and told me I should die for your convenience. That's not confusion, Ryan, that's cruelty. Ryan's eyes darkened. You don't understand. You've been holding us back for years. Daniel smiled coldly. Keep talking, son. Ryan's shoulders tensed. You think I enjoy living like this? He snapped. Barely making ends meet while you sit on a house worth $300,000? Daniel kept his voice calm, almost curious. So that's what my life is worth to you. $300,000. It's not like that, Ryan muttered, though the guilt in his eyes betrayed him. You're old, Dad. You don't even need this place anymore. Clara and I just wanted a chance to start fresh. Daniel tilted his head. By killing me? Ryan looked away. Don't twist it. I just didn't. Stop it from happening. The recorder caught every bitter word. You could have called an ambulance, Daniel said, his voice soft but sharp. You could have saved me. Ryan's laugh was hollow. Saved you? For what? To keep living like ghosts in your shadow. He stepped closer, his anger rising. All my life I've done what you wanted. School, career, family. But I never got to live my own way. You always controlled everything. Daniel's heart pounded, but not from fear. That's what you tell yourself, so you can sleep at night. But this isn't about control, it's about greed. Ryan's jaw tightened. Maybe I'm just tired of waiting for what's mine. Then you've waited for nothing, Daniel whispered. Ryan frowned. What do you mean? Daniel smiled faintly, leaning back. You'll understand soon enough. Ryan's frustration boiled over. You can't threaten me, old man. I don't have to, Daniel replied evenly. You already did that yourself. From the corner of his eye, Daniel saw movement through the window, two figures in dark uniforms approaching the porch. Right on schedule. Ryan followed his father's gaze, confusion flickering across his face. Who's that? He asked. Visitors, Daniel said quietly. People who care about the truth. The doorbell rang, sharp and official. Ryan froze. What did you do? Something you should have done long ago, Daniel said. I called for help. Ryan's face drained of color. You called the police? I reported a crime, Daniel said. Attempted murder, elder abuse, and false imprisonment. You're insane. Ryan shouted. They'll never believe you. Daniel reached into his pocket and tapped the small silver recorder. They won't need to believe me. They'll hear you. The knock came again, 3 hard raps that carried the authority of law. Ryan took a step toward the door, panic rising. Dad, please, he said quickly. You don't want to do this. I'm your son. Daniel's expression didn't change. No. My son died the moment he locked me in that room. Then he raised his voice. Come in, officers. 2 uniformed officers entered, a woman with sergeant stripes and a younger man with a notepad. Mr. Harris? The woman asked politely. I'm Sergeant Evans. You reported an elder abuse situation. Daniel nodded. Yes, ma'am. The man standing beside you is my son, Ryan Harris. He locked me in my bedroom during a medical emergency and refused to call for help. That's not true. Ryan shouted, his voice cracking. He's confused. He just got out of the hospital. Sergeant Evans' expression didn't change. We have the paramedic report, Mr. Harris. It says you impeded medical access to a cardiac patient. That's a felony offense. Ryan's composure began to crumble. It's not what you think. He's exaggerating. Let's listen to the evidence, Daniel said quietly. He pressed play on the recorder. The living room filled with Ryan's own voice. You think you can ruin everything? You should have died. Do you know what it's like waiting for you to drop dead? The officers exchanged glances, their faces hardening as the recording continued. $300,000. That's what you're worth. You had your time, Dad. Now it's mine. Ryan lunged forward. Turn that off. Officer Grant stepped in front of him. Step back, sir. It's taken out of context. Ryan stammered. He provoked me. Sergeant Evans closed her notebook. That's enough. Ryan Harris, you're under arrest for elder abuse, false imprisonment, and attempted manslaughter through medical neglect. She began reading his rights as Officer Grant secured the handcuffs. You can't do this. Ryan shouted, struggling as they led him toward the door. He's my father. Exactly, Daniel said softly. That's what makes it worse. Clara appeared at the hallway entrance, pale and shaking. Ryan, stop, she said through tears. They have proof. You too, he snapped. You're just going to let them take me? Clara lowered her eyes. You almost let him die. I can't protect that. When the door closed behind them, the house fell into silence. Real silence, not the suffocating kind that had haunted Daniel for weeks. Clara stood motionless, tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I should have stopped him. Daniel looked at her tired eyes and nodded slowly. Maybe. But you didn't lock the door. She exhaled shakily. I'll leave tomorrow. You deserve peace. Yes, he said gently. I do. She picked up her coat and walked out without another word. For the first time in years, Daniel stood in his home alone, but this time, he felt free. Justice, it seemed, had finally come home. 17 days later, Daniel stood by the window, the same one he had once used to call for help. The front lawn was quiet now, except for the bright for sale sign planted firmly in the grass. The court had moved quickly. Ryan had taken a plea deal, 2 years probation, community service, and a lifetime restraining order. The house would be sold, and every cent would go toward Daniel's new life and a donation to the Elder Protection Foundation. His lawyer had handled everything with care. He can't hurt you anymore, she'd said. And for the first time, Daniel truly believed it. As the evening sun poured through the living room window, Daniel felt a calm he hadn't known in years. His neighbor Peter knocked gently and handed him a warm dish. Beef stew. My wife insists, he said with a grin. Daniel smiled. Thank her for me. Peter glanced around. The place looks different, lighter. Daniel nodded. It is. I finally let go of what was poisoning it. They sat for a while, two old men in quiet understanding. So what now? Peter asked. Daniel smiled faintly. Now I start over. Outside, a bright red cardinal landed on the porch rail, and Daniel whispered, Margaret, I did it.